Here we are back again. Myself here in the United States, good old Thomas way over there in Germany. So good to see you again. Another question comes up. This is another biggie. This is another one that is similar to what we have been. In fact, this is a question that I have been getting all the time. And I'd like to hear your take on it, and then I'll give my take on this. And this is the whole thing to do with historical criticism. And it's from Margahe or Margahi. Dear Jay, thank you very much for all this new material and on the Quran. But you have got a problem. It says, and I won't do the whole quote because it goes on and on and on, but let me just say, he says, I wrote names like Ochlig and Luxembourg and Luling and Nuldeke and Quinn and Pressburg. And he also mentions the book called Goodbye Muhammad by Norbert Pressburg. But I found that when I brought these to my pastors, when I brought these to other Christians, expecting them to get excited by all this new material, and what I found was they shut me down. I got critiques like this from his pastors. I don't believe this. These people have a Christian bias. Be careful. This material could backlash against the Bible. That this same kind of criticism would be similar to the kind of criticism we got in the Bible. Therefore, don't use it. How do you answer that? Because this is a legitimate, I've been hearing it's not just by Margahe, this is also by other people as well. If you use redacted criticism or source criticism or textual criticism or any of the higher or lower criticisms that you and I have grown up with and we've had to learn, I had to learn it in seminary when I was being taught this. If we use it against on the Quran, will it not come back and ricochet and actually shut down the Bible? In fact, many of them, if you look, there's reference after reference in the comments. Mr. Smith, why don't you do this with the Bible? You'll find that this is much more devastating on the Bible than it is against the Quran. Why are you using this when it destroys your Bible? How would you answer that?
Well, first of all, I want to preface this with I feel a bit uneasy about answering this because I don't want to tell people what to believe, because that's not my approach. But okay, having said that, what I would say is I don't really think there is this problem because, well, actually, if you go back in history and look at where this historical critical method comes from, it's actually a Lutheran project, right? It was Lutherans who wanted to use the Bible to interpret the Bible, and who wanted to use the most state-of-the-art tools that were at their disposal to get there. So it's not, it does come from the outside. It's not supposed to destroy the Bible. It's from obviously Christians who wanted to get to know the Bible better. And I think if somebody has doubts, which I can understand, what I would suggest is look at the various methods that are part of what's called historical critical method. You mentioned some. Just look what it means, like what is actually done here. If you do textual criticism, if you do redactional criticism, what does it mean? And I think you will see that the method itself, that's absolutely fine because that gets you closer to the text. What you have to maybe separate from that is what do some people say is the outcome of the historical critical method, right? Because if you put in bad data in the front, you get bad data out on the back, right? If you get a good result, maybe you interpret it with a certain bias, and then you come to conclusions that are just not there from the method itself. So I would encourage people to actually look at it in a bit more detail and see how do people come to their conclusions based on the methodology that is established, and maybe that's where some problems come from.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Listen, Thomas, this is an ongoing difficulty, and I think an awful lot of Christians especially just don't understand the impact or the importance of historical criticism. I don't think you have any problem with trying to impose your beliefs or whatever on anybody else. We're talking about methodology here, and this is the problem that many Christians have. They have a misnomer concerning what we really mean by historical criticism. Historical criticism at its very base has nothing, it's not a Christian, it's not a Christian critical analysis, it's a neutral analysis on a text. In the case of the books like the Bible and the Quran, we're talking about textual criticism. We're talking about redacted criticism. We're talking about the source. Where did the sources for these stories come from? What was imposed back, if there was? And of course, back in the 1800s in Germany, there and Tübingen, especially people like Wellhausen and others who back in the 1800s were saying much of the Old Testament, the first 11 chapters were nothing more than borrowings from other tales. Therefore, they're the Gilgamesh epic and other stories like that were imposed and incorporated into the Bible. The books of Moses, the 5 books of Moses, the documentary hypothesis, they were written by 4 different authors, JEDP. These were good criticisms. These were perfectly legitimate. We needed to have these kind of critical analysis. And you're right, it was the Germans who were at the forefront of this. And I think what has happened is that in our seminaries, in our Bible schools, we looked at what happened in Germany, which then spread throughout Europe and made its way across the United States later on. And it infected, came down into the churches from the seminaries, and then it came down into the pews from the church, from the sermons. And by 1905, a little over 100 years ago, it decimated the churches in Europe, along with Darwinianism, because Darwinianism was being introduced about the same time as historical criticism. That decimated the church and the church has never recovered in Europe. However, in the last 100 years, we've gone back and we've researched and we said, yes, this is a good question. Can we trust what the Genesis says about Abraham? Was there a man named Abraham? Did he live in a place called Ur? Is there a place called Ur? Did he move to Haran, and did he come on over all the way to what is today Israel? Did he move his way up from east to west? Can we know that this man existed? And then he came across the Mari tablets and the Nuzi tablets, and they came across the Ebla tablets, and then they came across the Amarna tablets, which supported the 1400 BC, because these other tablets were all from Mesopotamia, from the same area that Abraham would have lived, and including the Amarna, the Ebla tablets, which were much further to the west, way up in the west. And it's fascinating. It all supported what we're now seeing about Abraham. Has the right type of character. In fact, has the right type of customs, exact type of customs that you see in the Genesis account that no longer existed after 1600 BC. Yet if the Bible was being written by Moses in 1400 BC, how would he have known of these specific customs so hundreds of miles away towards the east and hundreds of years earlier? Proving just how accurate the Bible was. But more than that, in the last 100 years, we found artifacts. You mentioned it in one of your references earlier, that the enormous amount of artifacts that we have from biblical archaeology that supports the man, the book, the place, and the events. Now, probably one of the best books you can get is this one right here. If you have a chance, grab this book, Evidence That Demands a Verdict, by Dr. Josh McDowell and his son, Sean McDowell. This has gone through many, many different reprintings. This is the latest one. And what he does, he answers every one. It's a huge book, by the way. You can see how thick it is. But he goes through and he just answers all the historical evidences for the Bible. He talks about for the uniqueness of the Bible, how we got it, the New Testament's historical reliability, the Old Testament manuscript reliability, looking at the Gnostic Gospels and other non-biblical. I mean, there's chapter after chapter after chapter. This goes through everything we need to know about the Bible. This is a textbook that everybody needs. This is 800 pages long, all taking everything that we've learned in the last 100 years on the Bible and also on the historicity of Jesus. I would say every one of you should have this in your library, and you don't have to read the whole thing all the way through. But as you get questioned by many skeptics, they could be humanists, they could be atheists, and especially Muslims, refer to each one of these, because he answers every one of these questions, really puts it into an anthology so you can use it in your discussion. It's very well written in layman's terminology so that people like you and me can understand it. And it keeps on getting updated as new archaeological discoveries come out. This is used all over in most of our seminaries here in the United States. I'm sure they have one in German as well, Thomas. But I remember back in 1997, I was asked by Colin Chapman in Britain, who is the head of the Islamic work for the Archdiocese, the Archdeacon of Canterbury, and he was the ear for the Archbishop on Islamic, for all the Islamic work in Britain. And he was quite concerned with what I was doing at Speaker's Corner, because I was using historical criticism back there in 1997. I had started to introduce it in 1995 because of my debate that I had earlier with Dr. Jamal Badawi. And I was using these kind of criticisms, can we trust the Quran? Can we trust Muhammad? Can we trust Mecca? historically. And so he asked me to do a debate, and I did a debate with Dr. David Marshall from Oxford University. It was an in-house debate that was only for the other Christian, only Christian scholars were invited. There were 50 of them, and half of them had chairs, they belonged to institutions all over Britain. And the other half were doing their doctorates or their masters, but they were all missionaries on the ground. So we were all Christians in one room. We had a 2-hour debate. Should we use historical criticism? Much the same question that Margahay is asking. Should we use historical criticism? And secondly, should we use polemics? Should we attack the other, their book, their man, and their city or their faith? Should we do that? Because that's, in Britain, that's just anathema. You don't use polemics, and I use both. So I did my debate, and after 2 hours, I went through and I used a lot of this material right from here and saying, listen, why are we scared of this? Goodness sakes, this is our bread and butter. We, of all people, should be the ones that use it because we have passed every one of these tests. The Bible has passed the critical debate on redaction and source. We passed the textual debate. We are the ones that have done, we didn't invent textual criticism, but we basically, it's because of the Bible that it was matured. The textual criticism is what it is today because of the Bible. Redacted criticism is what it is today because of the Bible. Whole historical process has been thrown at the Bible more so than any other book in history. Why in the world, if we're willing to do it for the Bible, don't say, therefore don't do it. Let's then use it on the Quran. Exactly. Should be the opposite. We of Christians, because we understand it best, because it's been done against our Bible, and because the Bible has come through the other end, why aren't we using the same specific critical analysis like what you've been using? That's textual criticism. Those 7 layers that you unpacked so brilliantly of Christoph Luxemburg's material, that is a textual critical process of trying to get from one language to the other, of get from one text to the original text. You must do that with the Bible. You must do that with the Quran. You must do that with the Upanishads, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, the Granth Sahib, all these other religious texts. Book of Mormon, that has to be done with. Every text that claims to be from God, every text that claims to be a revelation, that has historical statements, which all texts do. They always talk about people doing certain things at certain places at certain times, must be investigated historically. To me, that's just a no-brainer. Why are we fearful as Christians because of this? Since we are not only have had a text that has passed all those criticisms, but we understand it better than any other. And because Muslims obviously don't want us to do it. If they don't want us to do it, there must be a reason for it. And I will tell you the reason is because the Quran cannot pass the historical test, as we're finding out. Something as simple as going back and trying to find the Quran, the original text, the proto-Quran that you call it, that should be taught in every school at every level so that everybody, including especially Muslims, know how to defend it. If Muslims can't defend this, something as simple as trying to find the original Quran, trying to go back to the original text, does that not suggest, therefore, that there is no answer in this area? And all the more reason that Muslims need to come clean, and they need to stop saying, shut this down. And Christians, for heaven's sakes, let those of us who are capable, I'm not capable, Thomas is not capable, but the Christoph Luxemburgs are, the Gunther Lullings are, and the others, this new one that's come up that I want to introduce, if I could find it. Hold on a minute. I don't know if you've seen this, Gabriel Sama. Are you familiar with this text?
No.
Gabriel Sama, the Quran misinterpreted, mistranslated, and misread. The Aramaic language of the Quran. He is an Aramaist. This is his mother tongue. He is a scholar who's an Aramaist, took what Christoph Luxemburg did and also what Gunther Lulling did before. And I don't think he knew about Gunther Lulling, but he knew about Christoph Luxemburg. And he said, there are many stories, there are many texts. And he's gone through and shown you where all the texts come from. And he's going right back to because he reads both languages. He reads both Arabic and Aramaic. So these are people from that very area. They are even better at it than we are because these are foreign languages to both of us. These are not our native tongues. It is their native tongues. And this is the conclusions they're coming to. The people from that area, these are Aramaists. They are coming to the same conclusion. And they, as he said, we've been trying to tell you people in the West, wake up. We know about this. This is not a surprise to us. You're, in a sense, you're just coming in later on. So, and I'm sure he's a Christian. I don't know. He doesn't really say where he stands on this, but I'm sure Gabriel Sama is a Christian. And if these are the ones who are, listen, almost anybody that knows Aramaic would be from a Christian background. because almost all the Aramaists are Christian to begin with. They may not be evangelical Christians, they may not be Orthodox Christians, but they would understand the text so much better than you and I can do it. Why aren't we doing it? Don't be afraid of it. Come on board. Let's continue with it, because this has already been done with our Bible. That's what I would say. What do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. That's what I mean. I think the method as such is fine. Just look at the people who are doing it. Are they doing it correctly? And then I don't think anybody's anything to fear.
Are they doing it correctly? And are their conclusions, can they make the conclusion from what they are finding?
Exactly.
Findings, if the conclusions are correct, then accept it. If they're not, and they're actually imposing conclusions that don't make sense, that don't follow what they have investigated, then say so. And I would suggest the same thing here. And we need to hear from you all. Do come back on us, listen to what our good friend Thomas is saying, what we're saying here, and let's see if these tools can be used in not only understanding the Quran, but also understanding any revelation that's worth its salt. Okay, write your comments. Get back to us. Let us see what you're saying. This is Thomas, there in Germany, Jay here in the United States. Over and out.